What's up, guys? It is October 16th, 2017. It's time for Monday Q&A as usual. Um, I had some good variety of questions again today, so I think these will be pretty fun. We will go ahead and get into it and see what we have here. All right, bridging cycles with low dose SARMs for those who don't want to commit to TRT. This is a pretty good question because I think a lot of people don't really know a lot about SARMs as far as what they actually do. They read, they read online, hey, they don't have side effects, or they are as good as as good as this compound, as good as this compound, when really in reality, I think that the information is skewed or overstated. I've seen multiple sets of blood work from various SARMs, and they are absolutely suppressive in most normal doses, even lower doses. They definitely impact your blood work. Just like any other compound would. Lipids would probably be the main one. Not so much liver or kidneys, but definitely the lipids. Maybe other points of the blood work like the blood viscosity and stuff. But for the most part, I mean, they're doing a lot of the same things, just not they're just not as strong. So obviously the side effects aren't as severe. So to me, it doesn't really make sense to use them to bridge. I mean, in a low enough dose, yeah, they're not going to be that suppressive, but they're really not going to do anything other than just slow your recovery down. Even if they're mildly suppressive and you're trying to recover your hormone levels, it doesn't even make sense to use them. Those two and two are complete opposites. So to even consider that just really doesn't even make any sense. That's not to say that you can't recover while using SARMs, because I think that people have definitely done it. People have done it, but it's just going to slow the process down. So you got to kind of decide which one do you want to do. But I mean, I suppose if you were to not, if you were to want to use them as a permanent bridge, like you were going SARMs to cycle, I mean, then just do TRT. I mean, it's not, you're committing to the SARMs. I mean, it's the same, so it's going to be the same scenario. What is the effect of coffee on training? Is it optimal to limit to one or two a day? Well, I mean, caffeine in general has an ergogenic effect. We know that. It's been studied. It's tons of information on caffeine. No one's going to argue that it doesn't have that effect. But obviously, overconsumption is not good for various reasons. I mean, we know the effect on the adrenal glands and over-consuming it, and obviously building up a tolerance and not being able to feel it. I think that's probably the most common one, is just folks use an amount that, um, ends up causing intolerance, and then you simply can't feel it. So one cup turns into two turns into three turns into three plus an energy drink, and then three plus an energy drink and a pre-workout, and then where it goes from there. So it goes to cocaine from there. But seriously, yeah, I mean, it's in moderation. I mean, I think this literature that I posted the other day said something about anything over 50 milligrams a day can actually potentially cause tolerance. But 50 milligrams is super low. I don't. Everyone's going to metabolize caffeine a little bit differently, and I think frequency of use also would obviously dictate this to an extent. But I noticed that most people, if they don't use caffeine daily, then they're able to maintain sensitivity pretty good. So, for example, if they used a little bit more on their training days, and then on their non-training days, they're keeping it low to none. They're staying under 100 milligrams, like in the double digits. Then they tend to be okay as long as their other stress is managed pretty well. Tends not to be a side effect. But as far as like the question is, what is the effect of coffee on training? Well, I mean, the effect is that you're probably going to have a better training session. I mean, it does have an ergogenic effect. I mean, it's a performance aid. So yeah, that's the effect. But obviously, you want to be able to feel it. So if you have a tolerance, then you can't feel it. So don't build up a tolerance. Okie dokie. What do you recommend to correct biomechanics? My left foot aims at 12 and my right foot does not. More like two-thirds. How do you correct this? Well, thinking of my feet. I don't think either of my feet aim at 12, actually. They both aim slightly out a little bit. I think that's actually um, pretty common with the way that your pelvis naturally sits and the way that your feet naturally sit. I mean, slight outward. I would say that's what 1, 11 and 1, 10 and 2. So, something along those lines. But if now, obviously, if you have 2 feet that are completely off from each other, then that's an issue. You said one is more like at 2 or 3. I mean, that's really correct. I can't even bend my wrist over that far. So that's pretty, that's considerably bent, and it's probably not originating in the feet. It's most likely originating maybe at the knee, possibly at the knee, probably more like at the hip. Just because you got to, looking at the origin and insertion points. I mean, talking about your entire leg goes up to your hip, inserts into your entire pelvic girdle and everything. So I mean, you're not really going to be rotated. Probably not rotated at the foot unless there's some kind of problem with the ankle. I would honestly probably maybe talk to a chiropractor, a physical therapist, someone like that can actually look at your hip and look at how your leg is rotated in that regard. Because if you were to lay your feet, lay your legs down flat, and one foot's here and one foot's out here, you should be able to run it up that leg and also see that your actual knee, on that rotated leg is also rotated out, and that would indicate that your whole entire leg is rotated. That's the same thing on an arm. If it's just a wrist issue, then yeah, just your hand would be rotated. But if you run up the arm and your elbow is also rotated as compared to the other arm, then yeah, there's a rotation of the whole entire arm that probably originates in the shoulder, and you would need to address that. So you can pretty much not really self-diagnose, but you can at least look at that, the entire leg and figure that much out. And then from there, get it addressed. Like I said, chiropractor might be the way to go, maybe a physical therapist, just depending on what you have access to. Maybe even a good NMT therapist that knows about joints as well. If it's some kind of myofascial issue where there's where the glute is tight and it's pulling something one way or the other, but it's most likely in the hip, in the glute, somewhere all the way up the leg, not actually at the foot. Okay. Can a vegan truly bodybuild, or thoughts on vegan bodybuilders? Yeah, I mean, a vegan can bodybuild. I think a better question would be, can a vegan bodybuild optimally? And that is yes and no. I think there's some issues you run into, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but now with a lot of the way the supplements are, I mean, there are a little more advanced supplements when it comes to being a vegan, as far as like your protein powders and correcting nutrient deficiencies and things along those lines. I mean, there are certain nutrients you're not going to get as a vegan from food. You do need to supplement them. So that means that as long as you're addressing those common nutrient deficiencies and you're getting all your vitamins, your minerals, yada, 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 then you're probably not going to have a nutrient deficiency, though a lot of people still get them because they just don't have that knowledge. So let's assume that they're correcting any of those. That's not an issue. We know that a vegan can get complete protein sources, typically from combining, multiple sources together. We know that a vegan can also use supplements, like there are vegan protein powders, right? That'll give us a complete protein source. We know that. We know that there are tons of alternative vegan foods now that, to have some variety in the diet. We know that it doesn't all have to be soy. I think originally almost everything was soy. I mean, now there's still a lot of soy products, and soy in moderation. I'm not going to say that it's bad, but it's not something that I would want someone to consume all day long. So we know that you can moderate that and still have variety in the diet. Let's see what else. I think that the issue would be getting really, really lean. And I'm not saying that you can't, because I've actually had more than one vegan bodybuilder prep, but they were bikini, I think both. I'm trying to think, I think they were all bikini competitors, maybe one figure. But anyhow, we're talking about, if you're talking about the level of conditioning that a bodybuilder or women's physique or something like that needs to get into, yes, it can be done. I'm not saying it can't, because there are people that do it, but you need to look at the genetic component there. How easy does this person get lean? What kind of caloric intake are we talking about? If someone has to cut out an entire macro group, like they have to cut out all of their carbs because they respond best to a ketogenic diet, maybe that they're that person. Well, it's not impossible to do a ketogenic diet while you're vegan, but it's not optimal. We'll say that. It's hard to optimally do it. Same with cutting out, it's really hard to isolate. That's what I'm going to say. It's really hard to isolate macros in a vegan diet. Whereas in a traditional diet, we can isolate macros easily. We can isolate sole protein sources that are almost completely fat-free, that are completely carb-free, and it's just protein. Super easy. Makes it easy to manipulate the diet, makes it easy to time macronutrients a certain way, distribute them throughout the day, makes it easy for precise adjustments. And same thing with carbs, same thing with fat. You can do it with carbs in a vegan diet, you can do it with fat in a vegan diet, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to isolate sole protein. There are some protein powders, vegan protein powders, that are pretty close. Like they'll say no net carbs, or there'll be 1 to 4 net carbs, but I mean, they're not completely carb free. But I would say isolating the macros would be probably the hardest thing, but it's possible. Like I said, definitely possible, not ideal, not optimal, and a pain in the ass, but it's possible. But I can't say that I've actually seen, I don't know. I won't go into it anymore, because I mean, there are some people that do it, but like I said, it's still context. How genetically easy does this person get lean? So I can't really answer that any further. What's your current supplement protocol pre and intra workout? Okay, pre-workout, I do, let's see. Pre-workout, I'm doing AD's nitrox right now, or I will do Morphogen's Volugen, one or the other. I do Aminotor from AD. Intra workout with I'm not doing any intra workout carbs right now, actually, because of the way my training's set up. I won't go into all that, but I just do the Aminotor for my EAA product, and then I also do beta alanine. I just put it intra workout. I don't know, because that's just where I put it. It doesn't really matter, because I take it. Sorry, that's my dog shaking in his cage. I don't know why he's laying in his cage. Haas, come here. Come here. Say hi. Yes. But I do beta alanine and, like I said, citrulline, malate, 8 grams. Let me see. I'm trying to think what else is in there. That's about it. Hydrolyzed whey. I also have the hydrolyzed whey to the EAAs as well. So in the pre-workout, those products, I mean, it's a lot of your normal pump stuff, just in higher doses, Hydromax glycerol. I add agmatine sulfate, plenty of citrulline. I mean, there's a whole slew of ingredients. You can look the products up, obviously, But those are pretty complete. I mean, it's a complete pre-workout there. I don't really have to add much to it. And then the intra is just the aminotor beta alanine right now and the hydrolyzed whey. That is it that I can think of. I may have missed something. What are your goals for your workouts the last couple weeks for a show? Still lifting for hypertrophy or more trying to keep full and shuttle nutrients? How far out do you like to generally stop leg training? Well, I mean, for the most part, I'm still trying to maintain strength as much as I can, but that's kind of contextual to the person. I mean, if someone's really, really, really getting their ass handed to them at the end of prep, I mean, I don't want them to get hurt. In the last couple weeks, I mean, yeah, they can lose muscle, but I'm also wanting to be intelligent about it. I'm not going to lie, my strength sucks ass the last 2 weeks. Last 3 weeks, four's not even that great. I mean, it's okay. I mean, if I can go through the last, several weeks and I can still hit a compound movement and have some semblance of strength on it, like that's a good day. Probably doesn't even happen though. So my goal is just be smart, stimulate the tissue, get the volume in that I need because I'm not using training as fat burning, but I mean it is a decent amount of your caloric expenditure for the day. So I mean it's definitely important in that regard. So I'm not like hacking my volume down to nothing, So that's really my goal. Don't do anything stupid. Maintain some semblance of strength if I can. Maintain my volume, and you say shuttle nutrients. Yeah, there's obviously nutrient partitioning there, but you're so damn insulin sensitive at that point. That shouldn't be an issue. How far out do I generally stop leg training? For me, a week-ish, give or take, like at least 5 days. More like a week normally. Let inflammation clear, yada, yada, yada. I normally don't stop cardio that early, though, depending on the person. It obviously depends on the person's cardio, but if I don't stop cardio that early, that's still some leg, stimulation. And just back to the training side of things, it's just going to vary person to person. Don't feel like if you're not, maintaining your lifts 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, that you're doing something wrong. Like it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong. If you ask anyone that gets really shredded, I doubt that they're maintaining their lifts. I doubt it. Unless they just get lean easily. Like, I mean, into my prep, I'm eating, 1,300 calories or whatever and doing hours of cardio. Like, my lifts aren't maintained. It doesn't happen. I didn't really lose much tissue. I mean, but yeah, that's just kind of facts of life at that point. As long as you're not completely destroying your physique, in terms of muscle loss, which is most people won't. Okay, got a couple more real quick. Favorite nootropic and why? That's kind of hard because that category is so broad. Some people have different definition of what a nootropic is and what it isn't. That is a huge category because different nootropics do different things. I mean, you have some for mood, focus, talking about altering different neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, things like choline, GABA. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on there. So that's hard to give you a definite, but I would say in these, you might not consider a nootropic, so I'll give you a couple. I like tyrosine or L-DOPA and 5-HTP. So tyrosine L-DOPA would be for dopamine, and 5-HTP would be for serotonin. It's not something I use every day. It's something that I can insert in and out as needed in different parts of my life when I know I need it. I'll even do it in like prep or when I'm really in a harsh deficit where days I know like are really like my no carb days, which I do this in the off season some as well, but I mean I have pretty good serotonin because my calories are higher, but like a no carb day that's really low calorie and contest prep, I might actually add some 5-HTP for serotonin release because I'm not getting any hardly at all other than what my body's giving me. So I like that. The dopamine obviously has all kinds of benefits, so I can use that when I need it. Some people might say those aren't nootropics, so I'll say I like Nopept. It's just because it's versatile. It seems like it has a nootropic effect. It has a focus effect. It has, I would say, some memory retention benefit, but I mean, it seems pretty easy to use and really well tolerated for most people. So that's why I would include that. Some of the traditional race tams, like I like anti-race tam and oxy-race tam. I think those were really cool. I liked those. Uh, Plus they had like some anxiety benefits and stuff, but I don't really get into the harder stuff like modafinil, and I know that's really popular for some people because I mean certain things are also stimulating. Which if I'm using a nootropic, I'm probably not using stimulants, or maybe I'm using the nootropics because I'm not using stimulants. So I really don't want anything too stimulating. But I would say there's a few there for different purposes. I know there's basic ones, but like I said, I don't really get into the hard stuff a whole lot. I mean, there's obviously other stuff. The choline in different forms and all that jazz. I mean, there's tons. I've used a bunch of different ones, but those would be my answers. Last one. Fuck, I missed it. Essential philosophical section will have to be missed this week. Oh, well, I always get one philosophical question every week, just for fun. This one is and I went ahead and took it anyhow, even though technically you missed the deadline. Austin, is the mind the same as the brain? Good one. No. Yes and no. I would say, so obviously the brain, it's something that we can see, something that we could hold. If it wasn't in our head, we can see it. There's parts to it. We know it's been dissected, broken down. We know where everything's at. We know what it does. Whereas the mind isn't, it's a figure of our conscience. That's what it is. We could say that the mind is in the brain. It's the location, but the mind isn't something we can see. We can't touch it. We can't feel it. It's not a tangible thing. So they're not the same. No, they're not the same. I would say that they're closely related, and what one does is highly dependent on the other, and vice versa. But obviously, like I said, one is a thing. It's there. It's visible. You can touch it. All that stuff. And one you cannot. And yeah, that's a really interesting. I could probably have to think about that some more. That's really good. I probably should have thought about that one a little bit more. That's a good one, but I'll be thinking about that tonight. Okay, guys, we're about 23 minutes today, and we'll cut it off and see you guys next week.